focus primarily on the game with Gonzaga Saturday night in Smith Center. I'm going to welcome in my co-host, as always, Anthony. Friend, I know you're battling a cough. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going pretty well, Yeah, it's been bothering me all week, but you know what? You got to fight through it. So, yeah, no, we'll get this preview done for Gonzaga and get it up for what should be an exciting game, man.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously the toughest opponent Carolina's going to play to this point in the season. Um, Probably the second, or probably the most hyped non-conference game maybe since Roy Williams came back home. That's going to be played inside the Smith Center. Of course, this is a rematch of the 2017 national championship game. So going into the game, what are your early thoughts on Gonzaga? I know you've seen them play. I unfortunately have not. So, and the little bit of action you've seen them play, what do you think of this year's team?
Well, I mean, I saw the matchup against one of our biggest rivals and probably, the game that I think most people are looking forward to later in the year against Duke. And they stack up pretty well. That's without one of their best players, Killian Tilly, who's been out for most of the year with an injury. So it'll be interesting. They're a team that brings a lot of skill to the table, a lot of guys that can play. Currently right now they've got three guys that average over 15 points a game, which is ridiculous. They score in volume. Rui Hachimura is going to be their best scorer. Anybody that's seen them play at all this year kind of knows that. This dude is amazing. Took over the game late against Duke. It was pretty much the battle between him and R.J. Barrett. And look, R.J. Barrett is a guy that many people think could go number one in next year's draft. They think he might be the best overall player on that entire Duke team when it comes to NBA prospects. And Hachimura went right at him and really, I thought, dominated him. And he's going to probably try to do the same thing against Carolina in the Smith Center. He's going to be the big name to watch. But Zach Norvell, he is averaging 17.6 a game, 5.3 rebounds a game, and then you got Brandon Clark, who's averaging 16.9 and 8.2 in those same categories. So they've got some guys that can really do some damage, and that's not even talking about Josh Perkins, who I think a lot of us probably remember the name, but this guy's evolved a little bit more now. I believe he runs the point for them because he has 10 points per game so far this season, but also averages 8.4 assists. These guys, they are telling you, they're a serious opponent. This is not a team that you should be taking lightly at all. And I think we knew that when we scheduled this game. But, with their early season schedule, I think we found out a lot about them. Yeah, they're coming off a loss against Tennessee, but that Tennessee team really is potential Final Four team. I know you were saying that earlier in the offseason, and I think a lot of us were kind of like, well, this is Tennessee. Do we really want to believe that they're going to be that good? We haven't really seen them that good in a very, very long time. But they really are, and that's their only loss so far. They faced some really good opponents thus far as well on their schedule. We mentioned Duke. We mentioned Tennessee, who they faced. But that, in Maui alone, they faced a group of teams that could easily make runs in the tournament later on this year if they were to get in. Of course, Arizona is a tough team. They've played Texas A&M as well. Granted, they had to survive against them, but they played a good game against a Washington team that could be in the tournament. We don't really know a whole lot about Creighton, I think, at the moment. But that game was on the road, and they beat them there. And that's a team that early in the season had a couple of upset wins over ranked teams. So I don't know, man. Gonzaga, they really looked the part. I'm telling you. Right now, this team, there were some people, including yourself, who thought this team might be better than the 2017 team. And I was one of those ones that kind of said, oh, I don't know about that. I think you may actually be right on that, though.
Yeah, I told you that early in the off season when I was doing some research before the season got underway, and I just think this team, a little deeper, a little more athletic. That team really relied on Karnowski just overpowering opponents inside, until he matched up with Kennedy Meeks in the title game. Whereas I think this team is, it's not that they're going to finesse you. It's just I think they're more skilled 1 through 5. Everyone on the floor can score it. They can shoot it. Like you said, they had 3 guys scoring over 15 points a game. That's balance. That's what Carolina's trying to get at. And Mark Few, saying into this week, he's modeled a lot of what his program after what Roy Williams has done. Going as far to say that pretty much half of his playbook is what Carolina runs now. So I think this is going to be a interesting game just from the styles. There's going to be some familiarity because they met just a little over a year and a half ago. And it is probably the non-conference part of the season's highest, the most talked about matchup of the season. You look at the loss at Tennessee, not a bad loss, but it's like you said, they beat a Duke team in Maui. That's arguably the most talented team in the history of the sport. You go on the road, you score 103 against Creighton. I mean, I don't care who you are. 103 in college on the road is not easy to do. And then that game against Washington, Mike Hopkins done a good job implementing that 2-3 zone for the Huskies. So I think this team is way more battle tested than Carolina is right now. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, I would say so wholeheartedly. So far, they played, I'm looking at their schedule right now. They played 3 teams that are in mid-major conferences. The rest of them have been major conference opponents. And, to this point, they've navigated the schedule pretty well. Of course, they've had their moments where they've struggled in some of these games, but I still, you got to think this is what they're doing without one of their best players in Killian Tillie, who will be back later in the year. We're not going to see him in this game, but still, to be able to do this, and then you're going to add a guy that most people thought was your best player overall heading into the season, that's definitely scary. And I think you're right. Right now, they're more battle-tested. And, so far in college basketball this year, I feel like there are a lot of teams that have sort of stepped their game up. I mean, even Duke. A lot of Carolina fans want to say, well, they haven't had a true road game. At the same time, they played a lot of different opponents, a lot of teams that are probably going to be tournament opponents. And for Gonzaga, it has a similar feel, and they've even gone on the road to take on some of these teams. I mean, Creighton, like I said, was on the road. Tennessee, on the road. Again, some neutral site games, of course. I think that's where a lot of people will point to, but I don't know, man. I think ultimately, yeah, you're right. They're more battle tested than us right now, but does that automatically equal a win? Not necessarily.
Right. I think we're going to look at some stats, see how these teams match up. Gonzaga comes into the game, they average scoring 94 a game. Carolina's at 93, so I think we can expect points at a premium.
Mm-hmm.
They both shoot the ball very well. Gonzaga over 52%, Carolina at 49. They both share the ball well at roughly 20 assists per game. I think the interesting thing is Carolina's averaging about 6 more rebounds a game than Gonzaga, 46-40. Could that be the deciding factor in the game Saturday night in the Smith Center?
Well, the thing is I'm looking at their roster right now, and they got one guy that is over 6'8" that's going to be active for this game, because Tillie is, but he's not, of course, not going to be active. And that's Philip Petrusev. And I'll go back and look here. It's going to take a minute actually, it didn't really take. He does play a good amount of minutes, a solid amount of minutes. But the thing is, he plays 14 minutes a game, almost 15, averages 8.3 points per game, which is not bad, but only averages 4 rebounds. There are 5 guys on the team that average more than him. And one of the guys is Zach Norvell, who's actually a guard. So I don't know how hell-bent they are on going big. Maybe that's where Carolina will have an advantage. But the one thing that this kind of opens up for the Tar Heels in this game is if they want to use that smaller lineup, this is one of those games where you can use it and not have to worry that the other team is going to beat you with size. Because that's just not how Gonzaga plays. Now, the thing is I think that might honestly be the way to go in this game because you are going to need someone that's athletic on Hachimura. There is no way that you can have Luke May matching up against him. It's really just that simple. We've seen Luke May struggle against Brazdeikis from Michigan. Honestly, I mean, if you think that Brazdeikis is better than Hachimura, you don't watch basketball at all because Hachimura right now is a guy that some people think could be the one of the players of the year in college basketball. So they've got to adjust in this game. They've got to be ready to have somebody that's flexible out there that can match up well against them, whether that's Cam Johnson, whether that's Nazir Little. You've got to kind of be able to play to what Gonzaga is showing you. If you try to go big and have Luke May match up against Hachimura, you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
So what I'm gathering from you is you think this is the perfect time to where, and I've seen a lot of people, national writers, say this is the prime game for Nazir Little to break out. It's going to be a nationally televised game against a premier opponent. Is this maybe the game where we see Nazir Little kind of introduce himself to college basketball? Because, like you said, we're going to look. Roy Williams is going to want Gonzaga to match our size, but at some point you're going to match what the other team's doing too. And like you said, you want an athletic guy,
right,
on Hachimura, and Luke May's just not that guy. So if I'm reading between your lines, you're saying this is like Nazir Little breakout time, right?
I mean, I somewhat. You're kind of. You got to think that eventually that game's going to come. We've been saying this for, weeks upon weeks where we're like, okay, which game is it that we can pinpoint on the schedule and say, okay, this is his breakout game? Maybe this is it. I don't necessarily think it has to be, though. It doesn't have to be. What has to happen, though, is you cannot let the athleticism of Gonzaga take over the game, because the minute that you do that, if you go into these half-court sets and they're just blowing by you like we saw at times in the game against Texas and we saw against Michigan, you're going to be in a lot of trouble really quickly. Because the problem with Gonzaga is unlike some of these other teams, unlike Texas and I guess sometimes unlike Michigan, because with Michigan they really just slow you down on the offensive end, and if you get behind by too much, you just really can't catch up. With Gonzaga, okay, they're not really going to slow you down that much on the defensive end. The problem with them is they just put up so many points. They score so quickly that if you let them get ahead of you, the question is not, can we keep up with them points-wise? It's can we slow them down enough to where they don't just run away from us? And that's why I think if you go with the smaller lineup and you have Nazir who comes out and plays well against Hachimura or whoever he gets matched up against, whether it's him or Brandon Clark, that's probably who will be matched up, one of the two. I think if you do that, you're going to have a real chance to, first of all, he'll be thrown into the fire, and that's a good way to see what he can do. But at the same time, I think you're going to have a good chance to allow some of your other guys on the court to break out as well. And for me, going back to the small lineup, that was something that they ran all of last year. So who knows if maybe that's what gets Luke May going. Maybe that's what gets Kenny Williams going. It seems weird, Kenny Williams, it shouldn't change anything about his game. Luke May, it would make a little bit of sense because, as the 5, you're going to be in some different positions. For Kenny Williams, you won't, but who knows? Maybe it gets him going. But I don't know. Maybe this is the time to throw it out there. I don't know if it's a breakout game for Nazir, but I think it's definitely a chance for him to sort of assert himself, if anything, on the defensive end.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with everything you just said there. We're going to move in a different direction as we look further into this game. This will be the first time Carolina's played in 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they had exam this week where they only had one practice between Monday and Wednesday. I know everyone was like, "Well, this is gonna be a great time for Roy to have him in the gym working and all this other crap." But the fact was they were getting ready for exams and tests, which is a little bit more important. And also, this should allow Kobe White's ankle to be healthy enough to play in this game. Do you think Russ is going to play a major factor in how this game, unfolds? Like if Carolina gets beat, is there going to be a reasonable excuse to say, well, they haven't played in 10 days, it's hard to get ready, this, that, and the other, or is that just going to be a lame duck excuse if it goes south for us Saturday?
I mean, I don't really know how much of an excuse that can be because Gonzaga's got to be going through similar things, I'm assuming. I mean, this is the time of the year where every school has exams. So for Gonzaga, you would think they've been through a similar thing. They have to fly all the way across country as well. I don't know if it would be an excuse. I mean, honestly, in this game, if they get blown out, then there's some concern. But this is a game against the Gonzaga team where, to me, if you get beat, I mean, I don't really know how you can say, okay, this is a terrible loss. It's really not. So I don't know if there really will be an excuse needed. But the thing is, do I think that can be used as an excuse? No. Everybody kind of goes through this at this time of year because, this is exam time. I mean, everybody knows that when you sign up to, coach. I mean, Roy knows that. He's been through this how many years? He's been through it almost 30 years. He knows how this works. So, yeah, no, I don't think that's really a valid excuse, but I wouldn't be shocked if some fans will definitely try to pull that out.
Okay. Well, I guess now we're going to get to our part of the preview where we're gonna pick the game, and then I like to do the player that you think is going to have the major impact, win or loss, that we'll be talking about when we recap the game. I'm going to go first tonight because I've been very adamant, even when everything went wrong in Las Vegas and they went to Michigan and everything fell off the rails. I think Carolina's going to win this game. I think this is one of those games that Roy Williams gets the team up for. I think this is the first time they'll play in front of a crowd that has energy. They'll be ready to go. They've had 10 days to prepare. I mean, I know they've been in the classroom as much as they've been in the gym, but I do think they've gotten better over this stretch. I think Kobe White's going to be healthier, ready to go. And I think the guy that we're going to talk about is ultimately, I think this is Nazir Little's breakout game. I think this is where he introduces himself to college basketball and makes ESPN talk about him, although they'll want to find a way to talk about Zion Williamson somehow.
Yeah, Dickie V is calling the game, so that's a given.
Yeah, so I mean, I think this is just this team is 7-2, and many people are wondering about this team. I think this is a reminder that this is still one of the nation's better teams. This is a team that's going to compete to win the nation's toughest conference. This team has Final Four aspirations, and I think Saturday they'll prove that they have all the intangibles to get there. So, with that, what's your prediction, and who's the guy that's going to have the big game for us Saturday night?
I told you, God, it's got to be about a week and a half ago. At this game, doesn't this just kind of feel like, I think it was 2014, the game against number 1 Michigan State, a team that I think everybody just felt was so much better coming in than us. The rankings said that, and I mean nationally, not on, a Carolina level, but coming in, they were really saying, okay, there's no way they're beating them. This team is just too good. And I think that, heading into that game, against Tennessee, I think that was kind of the way people were feeling about Gonzaga. Now they got beat, and you can take whatever side of the aisle you're on this. To me, I didn't like that they got beat. I did not want them coming in here with extra motivation, which I think they will. But at the same time, this feels like that type of game, and I wonder, if it comes down to coaching, I think Roy Williams has the advantage. Mark Few, I think, is a really, really good coach. But we saw in the national championship game who made the right adjustments at the right time. I think it could be a very similar game. I think that, like you said, it's a Saturday night. The environment is going to be unbelievable, I would hope. I think that it's got to be. This has to be the best environment maybe outside of Duke. And I think these guys are going to be fired up. I think they find a way to win. And I think one of the main reasons that they find a way to win, as we've seen in just about every big game that we played in so far this year, is that Kobe White just steps up. I think Kobe White has a really good night. I think, from what I've seen, Josh Perkins isn't the best defender. I don't think he's awful, but I think Kobe White will be able to get his own shot pretty easily. And I think he's able to really take over the game when Carolina needs him to. And I think they pull out the victory. It'll be a tough one. It's going to be one that I think is going to have you biting your nails. And in the end, even if Carolina does lose it, it's going to be one that is going to be extremely helpful come March. So it'll be a great game. I think, we're both kind of in that same area. I don't think either one of us are seeing this as a blowout. I think it's going to be a very close game for both of us. But we both have freshmen stepping up as well to, have great games and potentially lead us to victory.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I do think Kobe's going to play a major role in this game. Normally in these kind of games, guard play is so important in today's basketball that it wouldn't shock me if he's a difference maker. Ultimately, I just hope we're both right, and about 9 o'clock on Saturday, we're celebrating a big-time win instead of being frustrated at another loss. So is there anything else you want to add to this edition of the podcast? I know it's a shorter version, but, there's just some instances we're not allowed to have a longer show tonight. So is there anything else you want to say before we get off?
Nah, man, I think we're pretty good.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining me as always. We'll get this uploaded. Facebook, Twitter, all the sites to go to find it. Spreaker is the main place. Hope you guys check it out. If you ever want to hit us up, tweet at us or whatever. And thank you guys for listening. Go Tar Heels.